Michael Price is on the line with us. He is the counsel to the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law. BrennanCenter.org is the website. He's also the author of a absolutely brilliant piece. I saw it over at Alternet. I believe it started at Slate. Correct me if I'm right, or it started on your blog on the website at Brennan Center, right, Michael?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, it was originally posted on Salon, but it's also on our website.
A Salon, there you go. And it's basically, I'm scared of my TV. Tell us what provoked this.
Well, I bought a new TV. I actually wasn't expecting any of this. Like everybody, I had an old one. It was time to get rid of it. Volume got stuck on 63, so I went online. I looked for a TV with a nice picture, the right size, a decent price, and it was a smart TV. It seemed interesting. I thought I might be able to get Netflix on it or something like that. And I get it home and plug it in, and the first thing that I see after a demand for Wi-Fi connectivity is a 46-page privacy policy that I hadn't seen before, wasn't expecting, and absolutely shocked me.
And being a lawyer, unlike the rest of us, you actually bothered to read it.
I did. I was curious to see what sort of, I didn't realize, I was not expecting a privacy policy to come with my television. So I was curious, as somebody who deals with privacy issues in the law, to see what kind of information the TV was going to collect and what it was planning on doing with it. And the answer to that question turns out to be quite a lot of information. It logs where, when, and how you use the television. It sets cookies. It monitors social media and web browsing if you do that through the TV. It flat out ignores requests to not track its users. But the scariest part of the whole thing was that the policy told me this thing comes with a built-in camera with facial recognition that's going to provide gesture control. And, oh, by the way, it also has a microphone, which is going to allow you to have a voice recognition feature to control the TV. But then I read this warning that said, please be aware that if your spoken words include personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured and transmitted to a third party. So I'm sitting there saying, really? I'm not supposed to say anything personal in front of the television? That's a tall order when the thing is sitting in your living room or your bedroom.
This is so bizarre. I remember when I was 7, 8 years old and just a little kid sitting watching TV with my parents, and I think it was Ed Sullivan. Somebody came on and, or maybe it was Soupy Sale, whatever it was. Somebody came on and made a joke about how we can see you on the TV, and it suddenly hit me. Oh my God, they can see me, and I kind of freaked out about it. And my dad was sitting next to me. And he was like, he's just making a joke. They can't see you. But I think every little kid goes through this period where they wonder, can they see me? I can see them. Can they see me? Now they can see you.
Yeah, it's
and hear you.
The Orwell references get, I think, overused, but in this case, the similarity to the telescreen was striking. In that this is something that is not just for you to watch, but is also watching and listening to you.
Right. The telescreen was the device in George Orwell's novel 1984 that watched people while they watched it. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, ever since Ed Snowden's revelations came out, and even for a few of my techie friends before that, this weekend I was in Denver at a board meeting for a group that I'm on, and one of the guys on the board is he is a tech savvy. He's a programmer. He makes his living, doing programming and websites and things, and this guy just in the normal course of a day operates at a level that I can't even imagine getting to in terms of his intellect and his knowledge of the web. It's astonishing. And I looked at his computer, and he's got a little Band-Aid over the camera on the top of his Mac Airbook, and he's got a little button of what looks like maybe epoxy or something over the two cameras on his phone. And like, really? You're that paranoid?
A little difficult. I was actually surprised by the number of people who responded to this article by saying exactly that. Hey, just cover it up with a piece of electrical tape or a Band-Aid so it doesn't damage the camera.
Right.
And that is something that you can do. It'll stop the camera from working, but it also stops the camera from working for when you might want to actually use it. So to have to damage the technology in order to retain your privacy seems a little bit absurd.
Yeah, and with the microphone, how do you covering a microphone is a lot harder, isn't it?
It is, but I decided I did not need the TV to listen to me or yell at the television to turn it off or switch the channel. But using my remote control was I think preferable.
Right.
But it raises some serious privacy questions. From a law enforcement standpoint, but also from a third-party advertising standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we used to worry about the government snooping on us and coming after us, but really, I think the much bigger threat is big corporations because, the banner ad is dying out, and what it's replacing it as a revenue source for all these companies on the internet is selling your data, is learning everything they can about you and then selling that, and the ultimate way to do that is to put a camera and a microphone in your bedroom or your living room. In your piece, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a few days since I read it, but I believe that when I read it, you said that either the terms and conditions said this or the instructions or you concluded it, that if you were to disable the microphone and the camera, that the television would not work correctly. Do I have that right?
Well, the high-tech features of the television no longer work. It is an option. You can restart the television from factory settings and decide not to connect it to the internet. But then you have no access to the basic features that you might expect out of a smart TV, access to a streaming service or something like that to watch movies on. But it also prevents the television from doing things like updating software and that sort of thing. Of course, television has software in it now. But you lose a lot of the functionality. And it shouldn't really have to be that kind of trade-off. That's the argument I was hoping to make.
So, Michael, I mean, we're talking with Michael Price. He's the counsel at the Liberty and National Security Program over at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law. BrennanCenter.org is the website. And he wrote this brilliant piece that's all over the internet. I found it on Alternate. It's in Salon about how his TV is scaring him. And we have just a minute left, Michael. Do you see a solution? Are there any proposed solutions to this? Is there some, equivalent of net neutrality or something, or some sort of a privacy rule that we should be looking at legislatively to prevent companies from sucking up all this data on us?
Yeah, there are a couple of legal issues here. The most troubling for me is law enforcement access to all of this data. So you can not like the idea that your ads are going to be targeted to you, but some technology, a system that really knows us better than our closest friends and can recommend a good TV show you haven't watched, is a system that knows who you are, what you've been doing, and what you're likely to do.
Right, and if it sees you smoking pot or if it sees a woman being pregnant and decides to report them, to the very real pregnancy police, monitoring pregnant women to make sure that they don't do something to endanger their child, boom, it goes right to your local police department.
And all of these records that get generated by the television fall under the category of something called third-party records, which, according to the Supreme Court back in 1979, said that you don't have a privacy interest in those things. You have no Fourth Amendment right in that data. And so just like your phone records or your email metadata...
Michael, can you stick around for just a minute, please?
Absolutely.
I'd like to get into this a little deeper.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Michael Price, he's the attorney, the counsel with the Liberty National Security Program over at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law. BrennanCenter.org is the website. And welcome back. Michael, you were saying that the data that the television collects on you is considered third-party data, did you say?
That's right. So if you go back to the 1970s, the Supreme Court ruled on the privacy of your telephone records. And they said, hey, because those numbers that you're dialing get sent to the telephone company, you don't have as much of a privacy interest in that information as you might say in the content of what you were saying. Right. And all of that data was relatively limited to something like the telephone context in the 70s. Yeah. What we're seeing now is that third-party records are everywhere. Every time you send an email, you use an app on your phone, you browse online, and now when you watch TV, it's generating a record of what you're doing, when you're doing it, who you're with, what you think of it, and all of that information could be subpoenaed without a warrant under this very antiquated doctrine at this point. So right. One of the things that the Brennan Center has been advocating for is a change in that law.
That's a great suggestion. I mean, I put an app on my phone a week or so ago to learn Spanish, which I had studied for 2 years in school years ago, but it has occurred to me it would be fun to learn, to relearn it. And now, 5-6 days later, I've used the app a couple of times. I haven't even signed up for anything with them, using the free part of it. 5-6 days later, I've seen 2 or 3 ads now on the internet for learning foreign languages, which I never saw before. Apparently my metadata, my data that that I had used this app has been sold. Mm-hmm. It's incredible.
That is often the case with free software. It isn't really free. You're the product.
Right.
Your information is being sold. And if you take a close look at a lot of these apps, you wouldn't think, for instance, that your Learn Spanish app would want to access your location or your contact list or your instant messages. But you have to be really careful when putting something like that on your phone to check and see what it's asking for permission to access, because a lot of times it'll collect data that's completely unrelated to the function of the app for those advertising purposes.
Yeah. And pretty much every website you visit, that's equally true for, is it not?
Well, that information is in the hands of, at the very least, your internet service provider, perhaps your telephone company if you're accessing it on your telephone.
Right.
And then some websites, like Facebook, for example, will track your web browsing when you click on a link in Facebook and even when you're not using the app itself.
Yeah, they are all about monetizing the data.
Absolutely. And all of this is being used to sell advertisements, but it's also all accessible to law enforcement. And I think those two things, the second one being, I think, far more urgent of a concern, are deeply troubling when we talk about the expansion of this Internet of Things, of putting chips in household items that'll facilitate and make life maybe a little bit more convenient, but it is also creating a huge trail of digital breadcrumbs.
Right, including when you're home, when you're not, what your habits are, what you eat, where you go. It's extraordinary. Michael, you got another just 3 minutes for a quick summary?
Sure.
On the other side of this break? Great. We will be right back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Michael Price is with us. He is the counsel with the Liberty and National Security Program over at the Brennan Center, BrennanCenter.org. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Michael Price on the line with us, the counsel at the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law. BrennanCenter.org is the website. And Michael, just to recap, you suggested that there are really 2 issues here. One is that these for-profit private corporations, in some cases very large ones like Google and Facebook, other cases small ones like companies that come up with the Learn Spanish app that I put on my phone, and now I'm seeing ads to learn Spanish when I surf the web, that they have the new revenue model is selling my information, selling your information, that we have become the product. And A, you'd like to see some legislation that at least regulates that. And then B, you're concerned about law enforcement accessing these things. And I wanted to ask you, does law enforcement need a warrant to access to these things, or can they simply buy this information from these companies in the free market? And what issues does that raise? If you could just quickly address those 2 issues, what would that model legislation look like? And how do we deal with the law enforcement, watching you through your TV issue?
So on the advertising front, I'm not sure that we want to jump right to legislation, but I think that the first step in this process has got to be greater transparency about the kinds of data that is being collected. So that might be something we could look into. I think it's important to give consumers a choice, and I think that choice has to be meaningful.
Is this kind of a consumer's bill of rights thing?
Something along those lines may be necessary. I mean, really, if all of your different devices and household appliances are connected, are you really going to look at the privacy policy for each one, and are you going to be able to decline it? And those sort of consumer issues are very important. I think companies need to be very careful about what they collect, because that data is very personal to people, and it may turn them off, but it also may unintentionally be used in a way that they wouldn't like.
Right, and anybody thinking of putting one of these new smart TVs in their bedroom has got to be totally creeped out.
One would think, especially if you're trying to turn it on.
No pun intended?
No pun intended.
Or pun intended.
You might get a little bit confused.
Yeah, there you go.
And on the law enforcement side, there was a case recently that the Supreme Court decided about law enforcement access to your cell phone. And Justice Roberts, writing for a majority of the court, said, look, your cell phone has way more data in it than just telephone calls or a contact list. It has all this data that the apps collect about you. It's full of location information and data about what you looked at on the web and who you contacted and what you said to them. It's really not something that we're going to allow police to search without a warrant. They require a warrant. The television, for example, does all of those things. I think the only thing it doesn't do is make phone calls.
Right.
But it has the web browsing and social media.
Well, you can even make phone calls with a television if it's got a browser in it. You can do it with Skype.
Absolutely. So there's that as well, and that sort of data, I think, especially when you put it all together and have it in a package that is really capable of giving you a window into somebody's life, that sort of information should require a warrant. That whether the police are going to the company or trying to look through the logs of your TV or your car or your dishwasher, that information should require a warrant to access, and I think the law needs to change there.
Right. And so, how do we do that?
We're going to have to have the Supreme Court overturn a 1979 case called Smith v. Maryland. But I think that judging from the last few decisions that we've seen from the court on these issues, that they may be willing to do that at this point. Well,
Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution says that the Supreme Court shall operate under exceptions defined by Congress and regulations established by Congress. There has been legislation. I think probably the most recent one was one that Tom Daschle championed that had to do with a farm bill that affected his state, where they literally wrote right into the legislation, the Supreme Court may not rule on this. And is it not possible to simply pass legislation that essentially overturns the Supreme Court decision or contradicts it and include that?
That could be one route as well. The law at issue here is called the Electronic Communications Protection Act, and it is older than the World Wide Web, believe it or not, but it is the law that governs all law enforcement access to this sort of data. And there have been a number of attempts in Congress to try and change that law and try and bring it into the 21st century. And
didn't the Telecommunications Act update that?
Excuse me?
Didn't the Telecom Act update that of 96?
The provision related to third-party records has not been updated since 1996.
Okay. So third-party records is the key to the whole thing.
That is the key. That is what we're talking about here.
Right.
It is not just telephone records anymore.
Right. So with regard to third-party records, what we want is transparency from people collecting them, selling them, distributing them, all that kind of stuff. And with regard to third-party records, access to police agencies, there must be a warrant. And what about the ability of the police to just hack your TV, flip on the camera, and watch and listen to everything you're doing and saying in your living room?
That's one of the issues that is percolating up through the courts now. The FBI would really, really like the ability to hack into your computer and turn on the camera. And
well, they're all hysterical about the fact that Apple has built encryption into the new iPhone 6.
I think that's a little bit of grandstanding on their part. So long as the law is what it is, that data still sits with Apple, and they can get it from Apple.
So they're just doing this to help Apple sell phones?
I'm not sure exactly why they're so concerned about this. That data is available, and the sort of scenarios that have been tossed around as the justification for building a back door, I think don't come close to justifying the damage that.
Yeah, maybe
not just the good guys that use the back door.
Right. Maybe they see this as the first step in a larger battle against these $1,400 secure phones that they've used now to discover that we've got 14 spoof cell towers in Washington, D.C., 3 around the White House, that are, where you think you're on AT&T's tower, but you're actually not.
Yeah, that is concerning.
Yeah, and they've got this new cell phone that tells you when you're on a real tower versus a spoofed tower. Very interesting. Michael Price, there's a lot of content here. Michael, you're doing great work. The Counsel for the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law, brennancenter.org. Michael, thank you so much for being with us today.
Sure. Thanks, Tom.
And thanks for writing this brilliant piece. This is stuff people need to know about, need to be talking about. This is an issue we should all be concerned about. We'll be back with your calls right after this.